Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. Let's get right into it. Our space weather conditions right now, our solar wind speeds coming in at a 417 kilometers per second with a density of 4.1. Now, according to SPACEWEATHER.com, they've taken down the advisory for the solar wind speeds to increase, possibly KP indices rising to a 3 or a 4. They have taken that notification down. That tells me that what we're looking at right now is probably going to be in or around about what we're expecting for solar wind stream to increase. So it will not be that big of a deal. SpaceWeather.com is not mentioning the solar wind stream that will be flowing through Earth's magnetic field today and tomorrow. So today's the 15th. This was the first day of that event, and it was supposed to last through the 16th, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, which again leads me to another thing I've been talking about with solar minimum and watching the end of solar cycle 24. We've seen the amount of G4s, G3, G2, and G1 solar storms weaken gradually to the bottom of this minimum cycle. And here we are talking about just a couple days ago, we were supposed to see solar wind speeds probably in the upper 400s through the mid 500s. And the day before, the day of actually, of the actual event, the alert is taken down. And there you go. This is the flattening of the solar wind. It's getting weaker as we get through this minimum. So no indications, in my opinion, of solar minimum ending at any time soon. As I talked about in the last broadcast, this stuff gradually steps down in steps. So with that being said, once again, the sun is blank 10 days in a row now without sunspots. That's 80 for 2020. The 75% of 2020 has been spotless. Even after the flurry of action we've seen in the first part of 2020, it has severely died off and back into a deep slumber. TCI is sitting at a 3.65 with a KP indice of a 1 and the 24-hour max of 3. And, you know, I almost announced TSI, and it's been a long time since we have looked at TSI. So what I figured I'd go ahead and do, since I just remembered about it really, let's go ahead and see if we can find out where our TSI is coming in and around. Actually, guys, while I got this logo up here, I'm waiting for this website to load. So we may have an issue with the site that we used to use anyway. So not that important. Let's go ahead and take a look over at the Grand Solar Minimum channel, our website, where we have our own space weather section. Take a look at some more statistics from our solar system. Look at that planetary alignment. Thinking about all the volcanoes and the earthquakes of late. Just looking at this formation with the big giants on the opposite side of us. The tug is on the opposite end. Magnetic field is definitely weaker at any point that it could be weak. Right now, it is definitely at its weakest. Solar X-ray flux, not much happening here. KP indices fluctuating between 1 and 3, nothing major. And as far as looking into the crystal ball here, as we say, we don't have any indication that we're going to be dealing with any kind of new sunspot activity. I wouldn't even really worry about this section right here. That is beyond the eastern limb. Here's the eastern limb right here. And then this is the other region that it could be an active region by the time it makes its way around. But at this time, pardon me, I'm not really concerned about this particular, and I'll even zoom it in. I mean, just look at how weak this is. Now, this is below that 30 mark. So just like the two active region spots that we're seeing right now, as you guys look at the SDO live in motion on the left, those two active regions, by the way, as they became Earth-facing, faded out. Those are also located in areas that we would expect to see the end of solar cycle 24 sunspot activity, which, as you can see, these active regions were too weak to become sunspots, have decayed away altogether. So this is just another indication that we're cycling down to the bottom here. So we have talked about this. People like Starman, David Birch, has always kind of also agreed with his timeline that April will be the true beginning of this bottoming out of the solar minimum and could last for several months. And so now we really got to buckle up and pay attention as the solar conditions, and just from what we're looking at here, they're only going to get lower at this point and stay there for a little while. There's no indication whatsoever that we will be anything near an active sun by the end of this year or even next year. I'm just putting that out there. So we'll see. I could be wrong. And I wanted to show you guys some really quick here at spaceweather.com. Introducing Comet Swan. That's right. Atlas may be falling apart, but now apparently we have another comet. Now, I'm not sure if they're saying that this can be naked eye vision. This person here, a telescope, binoculars, I think they're saying you could see it. But, wow, look at that trajectory. Kind of reminds you that one trajectory of the planet that just hides behind the sun. You can't see it, right? Anyway, so multiple comets heading our way. This is not Atlas. This is actually a different one. It does not, I'm looking at the article here. I'm not seeing anything about dates of when it could be possibly visible for us, naked eye. But this picture here was taken on April 11th. So it is at least visible to telescope and photography, not your cell phone. We're talking, the good stuff here. But just find it interesting that we have one that's broken up into 3 big pieces now, maybe 4. And then now we see another one. All right, and let's move on to another headline real quick before we start with some of our climate talks, our weather updates. Virus closes some meat plants, raising fears of shortages. I wanted to put my 2 cents in. I'm not really going to read this article, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in. I've watched all over the news talking about worries of food shortages, that there's a meat packaging plant, a processing plant in South Dakota recently that was closed. 293 employees have tested positive for this virus. So they closed the plant down indefinitely. And, they do about 5% of the United States meat supply. There's a lot of talk out here about fears of shortages. And some people are actually, and I'm not going to name anybody, but there's actually YouTube channels out there that are suggesting to go to your store and fill up your freezer full of meat because we're running out. Interestingly enough, I heard another YouTube channel mention this topic as well, and he had a valid point. The meat that's not going to be processed here for a while is the kind that makes it difficult for you to survive COVID-19, the hypertension, the high blood pressure, diabetes. So in a way, is this kind of a blessing that probably one of this processing plant in Sioux Falls produces and processes probably the most harmful to your heart and arteries? Let's look at the glass half full. And on top of as far as, closing up your food shortage fears, several government and private sector companies have assured us that there is no shortage, that there is plenty in storage, actually, that they have put away in frozen. So, look, if there was a problem with their already prep supply, I guess is what they're talking about, then yeah, we should worry. But these meat companies at this time are assuring us that there's no shortage. And on top of that, they're urging people not to go to the grocery store and purge or stock up and buy 3 months worth of bacon and pork and whatever. They're telling people not to do that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. We vet a lot of things out there. We are concerned about food shortages. I think in the long term, the more we keep seeing these farmers destroying crops that could be used, the more we're going to say, gee, I wish we wouldn't have done that back then. So I do worry about food shortages, but in a different sense. And when you really look at the product in Sioux Falls that is being processed at that plant, I mean, the YouTuber that brought it to attention that it is indeed that this kind of meat that we consume causes high blood pressure, hypertension was the same thing, diabetes, heart attacks, obviously, heart failure for sure. So yeah, there's a silver lining to the possibility of this plant being shut down. Maybe. I also know that prices are being, they're being driven right now. That's for sure, and driven up. So that's the unfortunate part of this as well. And that's what concerns consumers too. But I think the reason why the prices are up and the market's down and the prices at the markets are up. And I think the reason why the meat prices are so expensive is it's like a circuit breaker. It keeps the public from buying mass quantities of meat. If you jack the price up 3 times what you're used to paying for ground beef, you're not going to buy 5 pounds of ground beef. You might just say, you know what, I'm going to do 2 for now. And I really feel like that this is part of the reason why. Now, I'm not saying it's right by any means. I'm just saying I feel like that this is part of the reason why we're seeing meat prices being driven up. Go ahead, Mari.
Someone in the chat just noted that Smithfield is actually, that whole meat company, Smithfield Food, is actually owned by a company in China. It's one of actually the largest stock acquisitions by a Chinese company of an American company, and it was purchased in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So that doesn't surprise me.
Interesting enough. But, when you have when you have an outbreak of a virus in a food processing plant, 293 employees, I don't want them processing any meat. In fact, right now, I hate to say this, folks, sorry, pork farmers, maybe everybody should back off on the swine for a little bit. The swine flu tried to kill us all a couple of years back. We successfully got past that, but here we are dealing with a different kind of virus. But now it seems that we have a major situation at a pork processing plant. But again, my throw on this is that, is this bad? Yes. Are we going to have food shortages? No. And I believe that there are strategic plans on food securities here in the United States. I know a lot of politicians may seem dumb most of the time to you guys, but I feel like there are a few in there that know what they're doing, and they put things like this in place. And like I said, there has been reassurance of plenty of meat storage in the United States food as far as that is concerned. So that's my 2 cents there. All right, let's check out a couple articles. This is from record-breaking April snowfall, up to 4 feet engulfs parts of Finland. Good grief. Parts of northern and central Finland received record-breaking amounts of snowfall in April of 2020. The Meteorological Institute had reported the greatest amounts were recorded at Pajaka, I believe, and Sandakaila in Lapland, where up to 4.1 feet of snow was registered. That broke a record of 3.9. That happened in April of 2000, not necessarily in the heart and soul of a minimum period, but was at the tail end where right before things started to kick up into the next solar maximum as far as that concerned in that particular cycle. So interesting record there. But again, still a correlation to draw back to. 4 feet of snow in April. I believe this is twice now that we've talked about. Didn't Norway have 4 feet of snow as well? I know Canada's had a storm with 4 feet of snow. Russia, I believe, got somewhere around 3.5 feet of snow not too long ago. It seems like every major continent in the northern hemisphere is picking up 4 feet of snow very late in the year. And remember, we saw a very heavy amount of snow in the early part of fall 2019. So let's think about that for a minute. So here we are, we're talking about 4 feet snowing fall in parts of the world In Canada, yes. Not here in the U.S., thank God. But the U.S. was the fall 4 foot of snow that fell. That was the headlines. So we've had various parts of the world throughout the winter each month, no doubt, at least receive 2 to 4 feet of snow per month, or at least once in that month. Somewhere there was an anomaly each month of the winter. So that gives us May, June, July, and August, 4 months. So we are talking about 8 months of the year that we will see snow and freezing conditions. Now, granted, you're going to have your mild areas in the south. You know, I'm not saying Texas is going to be snowing in April and May. I'm just saying 8 months of the year, we are seeing snow and large amounts of it. And some parts of the country are starting to see it year round. And I'm talking about places like Yellowstone and in the upper elevations of Montana. Another thing I saw on Twitter, someone sharing the atmospheric air temperatures. I can't remember what the height was, but it was like -30, -40 Fahrenheit. And for this time of year, that's incredibly cold. Which is why we saw such violent tornadoes as well. How ridiculously cold the upper atmosphere is right now. And that warm Gulf air, that moisture interacts with it. It's violent. And these storms are showing it. And then you throw in, then you got your folks that say, well, CO2 causes, temperature rise. That's why there's so much water vapor in the air. That's why all these big snows are happening. No, there is water vapor from warmer temperatures. Those are gone. But these highly charged particles are amplifying these water vapor droplets. Supercharged. No one's ever seen this before. So if anything, just tell people to do some more research. Don't be settled on the science. Even us that follow this, we still have to continue to sharpen our skills. Information changes on a daily basis. I thought we were for a shoe-in to have a very cold winter for 2019 and 2020 here in the United States, especially in the eastern and the Ohio Valley area. I thought for sure we were going to see 78, 79 temperature rivals and snow rivals of the 78, 79 winter. But I didn't take a few things into account. One, that our tilt to the sun on January 5th, 2020 was the closest, at its closest point. We are now pulling away from that close point. And before that, we had seasonal temperatures and also with El Nino, a weak to moderate El Nino at times. So you have that delay effect from El Nino and carrying over into the December, January, February months. Now that conditions have been neutral for quite some time, we're also starting to see a drop in our temperatures, as last month came in at 0.48 above baseline. So that was simply a 28 point drop. And a lot of that has to do with a few things, that our ocean temperatures are leveling off. They're not as warm. Combine that with low solar activity, more cloud nucleation. A lot of moisture fell in March, and right now in April, we are going to see that trend continue. And I know you guys already know this, but when you have more moisture, when you have more rainfall, whatever, flooding, that is an effort in cooling. It does not warm anything up when you're constantly with moisture on the ground, saturated soil. There's no warming from that. And then couple that in with your cloud coverage. The thick cloud coverage that we have because of the increased amounts of cosmic rays that are in our atmosphere. In fact, I almost forgot. We are 11.1% now. We are 0.6% away from the space age record of cosmic radiation in our atmosphere at 11.7, which was set back in February of 2009, 11 years ago, during the last bottoming out of a solar minimum. So, guys, it's not that hard to connect the dots if you've been following this topic for a while. And I hope that I am breaking this down in layman's term enough to help people understand what is really going on in our atmosphere as far as why we are seeing these rain bombs, these snow bombs, why are we having earthquakes, why are we having volcanic eruptions. Speaking of that, yesterday, this was yesterday's news, I get that, or the 13th actually, but another strong eruption occurred at Indonesia's Krakatau volcano, April 13th, 2020, 3 days after a powerful magnetic eruption when the volcano spewed ash up to 47,000 feet above sea level. Aviation code remains orange. Now, this other strong explosion, let's see what the height on this one was. Are they not reporting it? What the hey? Oh, they're doing the little summary here before we get there. I get you. Thanks a lot, guys. Nonetheless, how many, Lots of history around this time of the year as well for volcanic eruptions. Tambora was not that long ago, just a few days ago, I think we had the anniversary date of Tambora. The Indonesia right now has seen their share of large volcanic eruptions. 47,000 feet is that really close to that magic number of 55,000 feet, where it really starts to affect climate on a global scale. And I think with all the volcanic eruptions we had from 19, big ones too, and we've seen some pretty large events already in 2020. This is another reason too why even during this worldwide shutdown, we are still seeing large amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere. I know earthquakes release a very concentrated amount of CO2, and of course, volcanic eruptions. So it doesn't surprise me when I saw the numbers go up on CO2 for March, even though China, India, the United States all have shut down industrial for the most part or scaled way back. Temperatures dropped in March, CO2 went up. Which brings me to this piece here. NASA fights campaign to remove 97% climate change as consensus challenge. Now, nothing sends climate skeptics into orbit faster than seeing NASA repeat that 97% climate consensus claim, but the effort to have the Obama-era declaration removed from the government website is suffering from a failure to launch. NASA officials rejected the Competitive Enterprise Institute July 9th request for correction under the Equality Act, concluding that changes to the website are not needed at this time, prompting the Free Market Group to file an appeal on Tuesday. On its global climate change page, NASA states multiple studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals that shows 97% or more of actively publishing climate scientists agree that climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities. So when May 1st, and we go to Dr. Roy Spencer's page, and let's say April drops, which I'm confident in that happening. I can't see any reason why. I guess it could be wrong just to smack me in the face, but let's just hypothetically say that April drops another 0.15, and all of a sudden we're sitting at 0.33 above baseline. Now, mind you, most of April, if not all of April, the majority of the world is shut down. So again, CO2 levels will continue to climb. Temperatures will continue to drop. So I applaud this group of people who are trying to fight NASA on this consensus talk. And my advice is that we keep the pedal down and continue to press NASA, because we are going to have new data coming up in the next 2 weeks that will help push this if the temperatures go down. And if they go back up, well, then we got a couple more months to kind of wait and see what they do from there. But if May 1st and we do see another drop in temperatures in April from the peak of 0.76 in February down to 0.48 in March, and then who knows in April, possibly in the 0.30s, maybe lower, then you have a really good challenge to any consensus scientist at this time. Please explain how when we cut out human activities, that CO2 continues to rise and temperatures continue to fall. And a lot of it has to do with the nature of CO2 in the first place. Where does the world's bulk of CO2 come from? The ocean, next to seismic activity such as volcanoes and, of course, earthquakes. But yeah, the ocean. And when you have melt in the ocean, that's also releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. So, I mean, to me, and I know most of you agree, that when we see these numbers, it shows that CO2 is still up 416 parts per million, even though our industries are shut down, temperatures are dropping. You know, we're 6-7 degrees below average right now for this time of year in most places. I mean, yeah, it's going to continue to drop. And then you're going to look at your CO2 friends who say that that's pollution, it's causing global warming, and try to tell them, please explain to me how this is happening, how CO2 is still rising, but yet the temperatures are starting to slightly drop again. So many factors to play now, too. More record snow. Nearly 18 inches hits near Boulder, Colorado. Guys, this happened in a 36-hour period. Monday morning, April 13th. Boulder also experienced record cold, a new record low daily temperature of 27 degrees on April 13th. Previous record was 38 degrees on 1945. A low of 10 degrees on April 14th broke the daily low record of 14 degrees set in 2014, which was the year of those really bad polar vortex that we experienced all over the United States. Boulder is only 8.6 inches away from tying their all-time snowiest season on record, which is 142.9 inches, and that was set back in 1908 to 1909's winter. And that is also during a very low solar. In fact, that solar cycle was probably comparable to solar cycle 23 or 24 as far as solar activity is concerned. So we're talking about record snowfall, and it's not done. And I think people over here in Colorado think that we have a chance of seeing that possibly being broken, believe it or not. So even in a winter that we didn't see a lot of areas didn't get that real cold air or that big snow consistently, but there were some impressive snowfalls throughout the United States. Now, the areas that got these impressive snowfalls are in your typical mountainous areas, Colorado, here in the Adirondacks, upstate New York, Northeast, the Northern Plains states, the Great Lakes. That's where the snow is always going to fall, especially back in those colder winters like those of 78 and 79. But nonetheless, still breaking snow records, cold records as we head through the middle of May. I saw footage of this yesterday. This storm was from the 13th, actually. The flooding kills at least 2 after heavy downpours in Iran. It says here, heavy downpours have caused flooding in several Iranian provinces, mainly in the northeastern and central parts of the country, killing at least 2 people and damaging dozens of houses. The Iranian Red Cross Society emergency workers and other organizations have been dispatched to the flood-hit areas and are carrying out rescue and relief operations. Another flood situation here in the Middle East. The director of crisis management of South Croatian government also stated that 109 relief and rescue teams are prepared to deploy to the flood-hit areas if necessary. In January, severe rainfall and flooding blocked roads and destroyed houses and displaced hundreds of people in the provinces of Kerman, Sistan, and the Balochistan, as well as Hormozgan. Hormozgan, whoever lives out there. I didn't mean to butcher your country. You guys, believe it or not, we have a lot of followers from this region, Iran, Turkey, on our Facebook page. So I do not mean any disrespect. I just have a I think this is someone who told me the reason why they watch this channel is because of me butchering the pronunciation of some of these towns. I wouldn't be surprised if Vegas has betting odds on words that I would definitely mess up. So anyway, but no, more flooding here in Iran. This is twice we've seen something this major, several times across the Middle East. There's also a lake in Israel. I meant to bring that up today as well, and I forgot all about it. But a lake in Israel that is full right now, and it's been 300 years since this lake has been at the level that it's at. So don't talk about climate change where there's drought happening everywhere. Guys, there's so much moisture out there that we are starting to see this strain on all of our streamways, our lakes, our oceans. We are starting to swell up with moist water, precipitation. There's plenty of it right now, snow and rain. And it just, I think back to Al Gore telling people that, we're not going to see, the snow is going to be a thing of the past, and there's going to be worldwide drought and crop failure and shortages because of it. And, if we don't do something now to go green, and I tell you, the Green New Deal, people that think that that's a good thing for the world, look what your Green New Deal is doing now. This is basically a forced version of Green New Deal. This quarantine stuff, this closing down countries, this is a spoon down the throat of climate change. You're doing it. And when they take that spoon out of your mouth, they're not going to be able to realize that that's the truth anymore. That's the best part about this. They're going to see all this CO2 that's still going way up, and the temperatures are dropping. Even though human activity is down, CO2 is still up and continues to go up. Anyway, sorry. Got off base there. Major pileup snarls commute in Chicago and amid wintry conditions. Massive 60 car pileup occurred on the Kennedy Expressway in Chicago Wednesday morning. Guys, I think it's like 8 lanes on each side of the highway. This is as someone mentioned earlier, it's a scary highway even when it's sunny and 80 degrees outside. The Chicago Fire Department first reported the accident around 6 a.m., so this is right at the peak of morning rush hour. The fire department said 14 patients were transported to 3 nearby hospitals, but none of the injuries were said to be life-threatening. At least 32 other patients were treated and opted not to be transported, says the fire department. Here's a look at and it was just a light, just a light little bit of snow. What happens is, especially out here off of Chicago, off the lake, you get these sudden squalls and heavy outbursts of snowfall quickly. So it's not even a matter of the roads being entirely at blame or slick. It's the visibility. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, especially this last year, 2019 into 2020. When we get torrential downpours while you're driving on the highway or in a main road, even when you have the windshield wipers on high, it still is not enough. You can't see. I'm telling you, to me, it's so obvious that the amount of cosmic radiation, the highly charged particles that are in our atmosphere, I can tell that we are more than enough just by the amount of rainfall, how heavy the rain is. When you have all the fine mist every morning, when you're driving on a wet highway, and even just, after a big downpour, the aftermath of the moisture evaporating into the atmosphere is massive, on top of just the large amounts that are falling in a quick period of time. To me, this part of the science is real, and we see it every day, not just on this channel or other channels like this, but in real life. You guys do witness this in your own backyard, whether it's rain, snow, or cold. And speaking of cold, one more time, unusually late season snowfall to the northeast. What's new? That's nothing really that major crazy for northeasterns as far as late snows into April. But we are approaching that point of the year where this should be, hypothetically, this should be the last of these little clipper systems. And this is nothing, guys. I mean, we're talking 1 to 3 inches. I mean, still, we're talking about snow. And this is what we're looking at Wednesday night. Again, rain snow mix in western New York, upper New York, and Montreal. Snow showers. And then we get into Thursday. I mean, that's That's it. 3 to 6 inches across the state line of New York and Pennsylvania. A fine band from Iowa through Indiana of maybe 3 to 6. A storm max of 10 inches. Boston, you might get a dusting. Poor Boston. They've been so left out of the snow fund this year for sure. But nothing major, but still, it's something to talk about. And taking a look at the GFS, it is one of the last systems that we should be expecting to go through this area for April. And there is another system by Saturday, very weak. That's going to hit the capital region and go off to the Atlantic. Still some snow in the plain states. Another cold front coming through in the northern plains through the Great Lakes and into the Northeast by April 20th. So a little chillier. And we're talking temperatures in the 40s and 50s. So it's not like it's going to be 30, 40 degrees outside. But overnight temperatures could be freezing. And maybe, just maybe, a possibility of snowflakes. That's on my son's birthday that day, April 21st. Ohio through the Northeast. You're in a cold front, below season temperatures. The rest of the country seems to be trying to warm up to spring. Still cool conditions for the Northeast of the United States, and some massive storms firing up on April 23rd. That's a Thursday. This could look potentially as dangerous as what we just went through here on the Easter outbreak. So 10 days later, we could see another outbreak. In fact, with temperatures in the warm parts by this time of the year, April 23rd, we could be seeing some severe weather through Tennessee, Kentucky, and southern Ohio by the 23rd of April. And then just plain old heavy rain for the mid-Atlantic states. And there is enough cold air, possibly some freezing rain and icing for parts of New York, but that quickly changes to rain as this storm system here will be bringing in warmer temperatures. But then we have a bit of a blocking situation possible. And right now it's early, but it is possible that it could affect the jet stream across the United States. Right now it's keeping pretty much the United States from the 24th through the 27th is going to be about average. There is a weak pocket in the Northwest that starts off that run. But for right now, GFS, the models are pretty much favoring that colder air being locked up in Canada. And then here at the end, May 1st, they are indicating that we could see a return of colder temperatures for the Northeast by May 1st. So I guess I've seen this a couple of times in our chats. I don't think we've had enough volcanic activity to interact with climate just yet. But at this rate, and the kind of temperature struggles that we are seeing right now in the Northeast, is it possible that we flirt with that infamous year without summer? Is it possible? And look, we are on the East Coast here in upstate New York. So, and Joe Bastardi made this one word kind of famous this year, ridge and fridge. We're on that. We get that ridge and fridge where that warm air races up the East Coast. We thankfully benefit from that. And sometimes in the summertime, we get some pretty hot days up here near the Lake George area. But just curious, with all the volcanic activity we've had recently, will that begin to affect how we look at spring? Right here, April 28th, this is good. This is where we should be, right here. This is perfect for April 28th. And then we get to the end of the month, and we start to see that ridge and mini fridge, I should say, at the end of April and the beginning of May. I mean, look at that. The majority of the United States in the 40s overnight temperatures, 20s in the Northeast. That's some pretty chilly air for May 1st. I can tell you that, folks. I've lived in central Tennessee. 54 degrees in the morning is pretty chilly. It's usually 65, 70 degrees by May 1st in the morning time. So, all right, that's pretty much what I got for today. Mari, did you want to say hello to our lovely people in the chat?
Hello, lovely people in the chat.
You don't have to repeat what I say.
I don't know. I totally wasn't listening to you earlier, and people were saying, well, Edward said he's going to send you a speak and spell. I don't even know what you tripped over to.
I don't know.
That's the allure of this channel.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Perfect here on GSM.
Why you bully me, yo?
There's a lot of people upset about the meat issue. Is it extreme or is it not? I think we fall in the middle of the temperature gauge. So,
Yeah, that's fair to say.
We're not choosing either side of the debate. We sit on the fence watching the news and the facts coming in and assess things rationally. So if you guys read it wrong, there were some people, I don't know. I don't know if they heard it right or maybe things weren't clear. We sit on the fence watching. Right now there's supply chain issues, but they're not, it's like not 100% disturbed. And I don't think it's time to sensationalize or up the fear with everything. My biggest suggestion is we do have supply chain hiccups going on. No one knows what's going on with the supply chain.
Well,
and really what I encourage everyone to do is reach out to your local farms and, try to work on a local level. And I've come up with some ideas for our local community that I'm going to be working with doing some reach out with local farms here and just seeing if I can set up something where our community can see what's out there and share information on a local level on what our farmers have, what they need for help, and just sort of try to facilitate myself within the community, working with local officials, farmers in our community, supporting one another, building platforms that can sustain itself within the community. I don't think the supply chain issue is going to be fixed on a larger level. I think really the more I've thought about it is everything has to start on the small local community levels, and we all have to sort of come together and figure it out in small segments. It's a big issue, but it's going to take a lot more than just one person saying, hey, this is an idea, this will save what we're going through. Because the truth is, we're going to go probably a good 2 years of weirdness just because of this virus.
Easily, definitely, for sure. I see a lot of our familiar faces out in the chat. We really appreciate you guys participating off and on. Yeah, and look, I wasn't trying to stir up any controversy. I think it's safe to say, though, that let's just say right now on YouTube, there's a lot of sensational things going on, a lot of craziness. I've heard a lot of crazy stories out there. I'm not saying they're all fake news. I'm not saying they're all tinfoil hat related. But I get why it's easy to get weirded out, excited, or anxiety when you hear something such as a major processing plant like the one that just closed in Sioux City. I get it. But at the same time, there is a silver lining to it. It's a very unhealthy meat in the first place. I love bacon. I'm the last person. I shouldn't even talk because I love bacon. But there's some positives to if it had to be, I guess, a meat that would be in shortage. And they didn't say shortage. They said interruptions. Interruptions, not so much as a shortage. They have plenty on reserves. So who knows? But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning into the channel. Marty, did you have anything else before we left? Or is that it?
No.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Doug and Cheryl.
It's good to see all our
Edward
in the chat.
Knife
Matt's
Collector.
still not happy with the time frame, so
I'm sorry, Matt. We'll have to keep filling. We'll have to keep doing something where you can be involved at night as well. So, yeah. Anyway,
there's a lot to figure out with our schedule.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It is. I'm not pulling it too.
All right, that's going to do it for us, guys. Once again, thanks for tuning into the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Everyone, please stay safe, and we will talk soon, guys. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.